everyone. I'm here at the Gaithersburg Ukulele Festival with the talented, hilarious, and brilliant Jim DeVille. Jim is a well-known ukulele player and music educator. He's also a talented songwriter, performer, and writer, contributing editor at
Keep going.
Ukulele Magazine. Yeah. And thank you so much for joining me here today for this little
it's
interview.
an honor.
So, I want to first ask you a little bit about your journey getting into music. I know you played banjo first. Sort of maybe what got you into banjo originally, and then what made you switch to ukulele? What's so special about the ukulele in general?
Well, my first career was in radio.
Okay.
And I always wanted to be a disc jockey because I love music. My sister, who was 4 years older than me, was into the Beatle fad and had the 45s, and so we would listen to those together. And so I always wanted to play music on the radio. I love music. And so when I got into radio, I didn't know one thing from another. I knew what sounded good because I liked music, and I'd always liked music. So I could put segues together, and I could make a set that flowed. Mm-hmm. But, I would sit there at 3:30 in the morning on a Sunday morning going, how do they know what chord comes next? I didn't know what chords were, but how to make it work. Yeah. And so I even took a course at the San Francisco Community Music School about music theory. But I didn't have an instrument. I didn't even know you had to have an instrument.
That's so funny.
Oh, yeah. So I'm filling out all the answers, but I don't understand it at all because I wasn't hearing anything.
Truly
it was
purely theoretical at that point for you.
The scale. So that didn't do any good for me. And then I dabbled with a little piano, but that didn't do any good because I went to a junior college as an adult where everybody else had music in high school, and so they're doing ear training with intervals. I'm like,
you're like,
what? I can't.
Yeah.
I don't even know what it's like sitting in on a French class. You don't know French.
Right.
So it wasn't until I was 35 years old and well into my career, and that somebody gave me a banjo, a 5-string banjo, a crummy one, $100 banjo. The action was like that off the fingerboard. No. Like playing on telephone wires. And a book and some picks, and it was almost unfortunate because I spent the next 10 years memorizing tablature and the Earl Scruggs book and all those books and all that tab, and I realized that my head was filled with paper, and I couldn't play anything. I mean, I could play some things, but I couldn't play by ear.
Yeah.
And if I got lost in Foggy Mountain Breakdown, I didn't know where I was. I didn't know where home was.
Right.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
But fortunately, during that portion of my banjo career, I started a radio show called Stringtime Serenade. It was a bluegrass and old time show because I knew, being in radio, that I could write to all the record companies and they would send me product. All them. And this was about the time in the mid '90s where all the record companies were going to CDs.
Yeah.
And so I built like a 3,000 CD library of bluegrass and old time. Wow. But I also met at the time Bill Keith, a legendary banjo player. Invented pretty much the melodic style of playing, which is playing fiddle tunes note for note as opposed to approximating the melody like a Scruggs tune would do. And the guy was a complete theory maven, and right off the bat, the first workshop I took with him, I could play Cripple Creek. That was about it. But he's like all of a sudden playing the modes and going. But fortunately, I had a cassette player there, and I spent 4 hours recording workshops with him. And then I spent the next 3 years studying the circle of fifths and all that. And it helped me understand how music worked, but it still didn't help me play because I was still memorizing tab.
Right.
So that's when, about 2000, my wife's grandmother, we would stop in there on visits to Northern California, and she was like a funeral pianist who could play anything at the funeral. And so we would play like Turkey in the Straw with her. My wife played the fiddle, and I played the banjo. But one visit, she said, well, Jim, she went to her closet and pulled out like a corduroy little case, and in it was a 1920s Columbia Hawaiian ukulele, soprano ukulele. I didn't know what it was. I mean, I knew it was a ukulele, but I didn't know it was a Columbia Hawaiian, which were made in Chicago, but faux Hawaiian ukuleles. Nice. I said, Grandma, what am I going to do with this? I'm a banjo player. I wanted to be Earl Scruggs at the Opry. I didn't want to be Tiny Tim. And so I took it just to be gracious.
Yeah.
And I started the same exact, the insanity thing. I'm going to do the same thing and come out different. I'm going to buy a book and memorize songs and uke tab now.
Yeah.
And finally, I realized I got a Bob Brosman VHS tape, and he was like, "No, learn chord inversions, learn your neck," and that got me into my circle of fifth string. All that started to come together on the uke.
I can use that, yeah.
And so now I'm 45 years old and just starting out on the ukulele, but it was the start of my musical understanding in an organic fashion.
Interesting. So you really learned to play by ear on the ukulele. That was how that was the instrument.
Right.
Interesting. Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, and do you ever play the banjo much still, or are you pretty
Never.
much
No, it was a complete. I wish I hadn't sold my last one, which was a John Hartford wood tone ring 24 fret Deering, which now goes for about $5,000.
Oh no.
Because I had a trade deal with them on my radio show, and I used to get a banjo every year. But the great thing about the ukulele, other than me learning the organic approach to chord progressions, which we'll talk probably about in a little bit, is the re-entrant tuning of the instrument, which means this string is higher than that string.
Right.
It's not linear tuning, which is linear would be going up.
Yeah.
The banjo is the same way. It's a re-entrant instrument, but it's an octave from the fifth string to the third string. Here we've got a fifth from the fourth string to the third string. But all of a sudden, that drone in the key of C is like, and you start starting chord progressions on it. Just forward rolls like banjo rolls.
Yeah.
And
it is similar to the banjo in a way, yeah.
So you start, I'm like, I think I know how to play this.
You're like, I can translate a lot of that kind of over. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I never thought of how similar they are in that regard, but that's cool.
Right.
I like hearing about people who started playing instrument later in life as well, because that's something I've talked about. I've been on my channel before as well. Certain instruments and certain styles. Like for instance, if you want to become a classical violinist, if you start at age 10, that's considered late.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You had to start at 5. If you want to be, the world class classical violinist and stuff. But then there are other instruments where it's not. For instance, in jazz, most people don't even start playing the saxophone until they're in at least high school band when they would pick it up or something like that. And there are, and it's you really can pick up a lot of instruments. As I said, maybe not like certain classical stringed instruments.
Right.
Seems to really
cello,
be a limit.
It comes to mind.
I mean, you can learn violin at an older age, but will you be like the world class violinist of classical music? I don't know. I haven't seen it personally. But so many instruments, people I've seen them pick it up at the old age of 35, and actually get you're an incredible musician. So I think it's inspiring to see. People. I didn't get really that serious about playing music until I was in college, at least. So, I took piano lessons growing up, but I wasn't. I didn't practice much, and I wasn't very disciplined and stuff. So.
Well, this is one of my pet peeves.
I feel like I started late too. Yeah.
One of my pet peeves when I used to give a lot of private lessons was the student would come in and sit down and go, "Man, I wish I would have started." You see that 4-year-old kid on YouTube?
Yeah.
He can play, and I would go. He doesn't know what the White Album is.
Yeah.
He's never heard the White Album.
Yeah.
People that start later you've been listening your entire life, and everything is stored up here. So if I had started young, at 10 years old or whatever, I would not be the person I am today.
It's true.
Which is because I started at 45 on the ukulele. I was like, listen, what do I have? Maybe 30 years, maybe if I'm lucky, if I don't get hit by a car. 30, 35 years. I can't take the time to go to like a music school or I have to get into it and develop shortcuts that make me understand why I'm doing it. That was the main thing, the why.
Yeah.
Why do you play a dominant 7 chord instead of a major chord? I wanted all those questions answered, and the professional musicians had forgotten about it.
It's incredible how many professional musicians actually don't know sort of the why of music or even about music theory.
Right, and I can explain all those things because I wanted to put it into an organic context of emotion. And so I started tearing apart like 2-chord songs, 3-chord songs. In the ukulele world, we oftentimes get trapped in the book where we're just staring at this, and we're actually reading and not playing music.
Yeah.
And great songs, even 2 and 3-chord songs, there are great things about them that make them great songs.
Yeah.
And it's what I came to realize after tearing apart tons of songs was it's the relationship of the lyrics to the chords, where important words are going to fall in the changes, and soft words like sunshine and smile and happy, those are going to fall on the 4 a lot of times. You're at home, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, you're also going to say I love you a lot on the 4 chord. The 5, watch it. There could be trouble.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's an accident down the highway. You know, wreck of the old 97. So once I started to understand that there were basically 6 chords. The diatonic chords are the chords coming out of the major scale. There are not thousands and well, there are if you extend them and make all these jazz chords or whatever. But basically, we're talking basic Western popular music. There are 6 fundamental chords, 3 majors and 3 minors. And if you can understand the emotion of going to those from the 1, you're well on your way to understanding popular music.
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah. And I think when you're older, you can just appreciate that more than as a little kid. Also, little kids very few of them actually have the discipline to, it's like, do you really think you would have sat down and practiced for a long time at age 4 unless you had some parent hitting you? And I've taught a bunch of little kids, and it's like, their brains do pick things up so fast. It's like if they were only disciplined and practiced, then they would just learn so fast. But they don't, they don't care. And the adult students do their homework, and it's like, so when you're older, you actually want to learn more than when you're a little kid.
Youth is wasted on the young.
It really is. It really is. It's such a shame.
It's like, here's one of the greatest things of why I'm glad that I started late and I had that whole radio career before is suddenly I had answered the question that I asked on those late night overnights in the early 80s. I answered them by saying, I know why I like that.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I know why I don't like that.
Right, yeah.
When you start to string away, and that's when I discovered that was my favorite change. And all the Stone stuff I grew up listening to in high school and later, where it was like, well, take me to the station, or you can't always get what you want. There's that soft 4. Oh, I love it so much.
Yeah. That's cool. I like it.
So that's, if you just extrapolate it out to all the other chords, the 1 to 2 minor, that's close to home. Nothing bad is really going to happen in a 1 to 2 minor. 1 3 minor, I call that the heartbreak chord or heartbreak change, because a lot of, if you hear that word, it's going to go, it's a heartache, Puff the Magic Dragon. It's like, stay away from that unless you want to bum everybody out.
Yeah.
I started a joke that started the whole world crying. So every one of those chords, and so that's my most popular workshop now that I teach on the ukulele circuit, is the emotional value of chords.
Yeah. So speaking about playing by ear, I think your website is called playingukuleleByEar.com.
PlayukuleleByEar.com.
PlayukuleleByEar.com. Yeah, and I really like how you focus on teaching people to play by ear, because I think it's very important. I think it really makes it a lot easier to memorize music too, and it's just and I think that's one of the main reasons to even learn. People always want to know, why should I learn music theory? And I always tell people, I think one of the main benefits is that that's sort of the helpful when it comes to playing by ear, and it's a very powerful thing to be able to do. So I know you actually have a lot of resources online. You have a Patreon that has a lot of you have online workshops, lessons, things that people can, and I will put links to all those in the description below, because I think that you guys should really check them out, because it's very beneficial to know how to play by ear, and you're sort of a master at this method. But can you give me a little bit of description as far as like how you go about teaching people how to play by ear?
Yeah. I'll give an example here at this festival. I just taught a Buddy Holly workshop, because I've been to the Buddy Holly or the Norman Petty studio in Clovis, New Mexico a couple times and toured it and met one of the guys that did backup singing with Buddy Holly and Roy Orbison. And So normally in a repertoire workshop, you would just like, okay, we're going to play the tunes. But I write out the scale. We stay in one key because you can transpose later to the original key if you want. So just write out the letter names. Then I put the numbers underneath the Roman numerals of the 1 major, 2 minor, 3 minor, so on. And then I drew a circle of fifths, and I put that C scale on the circle of fifths. And even though people weren't there for a theory workshop, it's like, I'm going to subtly sneak this in to where I didn't even mention it at first. I just said, okay, and I taught them, first and foremost, it's learn the diatonic chords, or the chords of the major scale, in order of their popularity.
That's clever. I
right?
like that. Yeah.
In order of their popularity. 1 chord song. You're at home.
Yeah.
How can you miss that? Lime in the Coconut. Second most popular, 5. 1, 5, 1. You want some tension? Make it a 5/7 or a dominant 7 chord to force it back home.
Yeah.
You don't want to force it. You want to be folksy. Let it hang on the 5 major. Third most popular is the 4. So those are the 3 major chords.
Yeah.
Fourth most popular, 6 minor, the relative minor of the key. So in C, it's A minor. And oh, look at this. The 6 minor and the 4 are separated by 1 note. Logical guesstimation system. I think that'll work.
Yeah.
I think 1, 6 minor, 4. Oh, and 4 goes to 5?
Yeah.
Now you've got the whole doo-wop progression.
Yeah.
So all those songs from the 50s and early 60s. So we got fifth most popular chord is the 2 minor.
Okay.
And the 6th most popular is the 3 minor.
Okay.
And we're talking about going from the 1 to the 5, 1, 4, and so on for the starting of songs. And then using the logical guesstimation system to see where that progression might go.
Yeah.
Why don't we include the 7th? Because it comes out as a diminished chord, which is a 1, flat 3, and flat 5, and it doesn't sound very good. We use it as a passing chord. Hey! We're going on to one of the other popular chords. And if you look at
the outcast,
right? And if you look at a circle of fifths, and this is where you sort of sneak it in on them. Oh, we just played a bunch of Buddy Holly tunes that went 1, 4, 5. Well, look at the circle. 1, 4, and 5 are up at the top. It's like a musical cul-de-sac. These guys love each other. They barbecue at each other's house. Right? You
They're
start
neighbors,
going down,
they hang out all the
and
time.
here's your minors over here, and way down here at the bottom is the lonely diminished chord that never gets invited up to the top. Maybe sometimes they'll drive by and go, hey. So that's the way I look at things. And when people see it introduced like that, it makes it more real. They're living things. They're vibrations.
And they're things that we've been listening to our whole lives, and we just haven't been identifying them and tagging them. But it's like you've been hearing these progressions a whole lot your whole life. You just haven't. It's like seeing a color but never identifying it as green before, and it's like
that's a good analogy to make.
It's like you've been hearing these, you just haven't been. And so how would you be able to recognize them if you never put a name to them before?
All right, that's exactly what I do.
Yeah, very nice, cool. Well, so I guess where can people find your teaching materials online?
Online at www.playukuleleByEar.com. That's my main website, and I have on the right sidebar tools for learning.
Okay, cool.
And the most important one, again, is the emotional value of chords. It's available as a hard copy DVD or as a download.
Okay.
And my online work right now, during the pandemic, obviously we all lost our jobs. If you're working full-time as a musician, like I was, traveling and teaching workshops. So I immediately pivoted and started a thing I call Pop-Up Uke. And I did it for free for about a year and a half, where I did it like 5 days a week.
Wow.
And it was an hour that people would learn about and come on, and we would do ear training, song deconstruction, and what have you, and sort of created this nice community, online community. And then about a year or more ago, I turned it into a Patreon site for $12 a month. You get 4 hours of live instruction. It's every Sunday night, 6 to 7 Eastern time, but I record the session and then put it up on the Patreon site so it's available all week or anytime to watch. And again, we do ear training, basic ear training, hearing the intervals of the scale and the chordal intervals of the scale. And then we pick a song, I pick a song and deconstruct it and show how it works. And also we have a thing called Celebrity Sunday, which we have people like you show up and do 15, 20 minutes of what you do and share it with. It's kind of an exclusive thing, you know. We have.
I've done it before.
That's right. That's why it's exclusive.
Yeah.
James Hill, Victoria Vox, Little Rev, Brian Tolentino, a lot of upper tier players and teachers, because that's the thing that the people I gravitate toward, or the people like you that are so thirsty for the knowledge of the theory, but then how to communicate it to the student.
Yeah.
So those two main things, my website and the Patreon page, which you can pop-up you can find there, and also I travel anywhere at the drop of a hat.
Yeah, you've taught all over the world, workshops.
So if you have a club that wants to start to learn like this, it's very affordable to bring me to town. In fact, I was just in St. Augustine, Florida. I live in Detroit right now, but just the club brought me down there for a couple of days, couple of workshops, and it was fabulous. You know, I think they had like maybe 25 people in attendance, and
that's awesome.
You know, I go back home and wait for another call.
Yeah, that's great. Very nice. All right, cool. Well, those all sound like very helpful things, especially to the weekly practicing of all those things. I think one of the biggest challenges for people learning to play by ear is they just don't do it enough. They don't force themselves to actually study the ear training and actually do it enough. I mean, I guess that's with a lot of things. Is the biggest challenge is practicing enough. But having a weekly session that you tune into, I think could be very, very helpful for people trying to learn.
And I know it has been because, as a matter of fact, during this festival here, there's 8 people that have participated in my pop-up uke. Cool. We all, it's like the first, some of them I've seen before, but a few of them I haven't met. But you think you know them because you've been online with them for so long.
Yeah.
And but I wanted to say about one other aspect that has really helped my playing by ear and learning by ear is knowing the solfege. The do, re, mi. It's so helpful. I started it when I was playing the banjo. I got an ear training VHS tape. And the first thing the guy did was teach the chromatic solfege syllables. And I knew the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, but I didn't know that ascending there was a certain set of chromatic intervals, and descending there was a different set. Do, di, re, re, and then coming down do, ti, te, la, le, sol, se. But I just did it, you know. I just practiced those intervals, those scales, and now it's like, oh my goodness, it's like the best thing. I can hear when it's not diatonic. You know.
Yeah, no, it's crucial. Yeah, that's very good advice.
When you want to play the blues, well, flat that 3, flat that 7, you can hear those tays. Tay and may.
It's all about the tays and mays.
That's right, and you can have fun with that too. You make licks of. So me, make up words with it. So I would suggest, and it's very simple. I mean, you grab your instrument and, vibrate on that. We all want to go so far, so fast, when really, listen to it die. I mean, a dying note is a great thing. There's a song. Oh wait, Navy. Anchors away. Yeah. So that's, and this instrument is so great for this especially because it's got this la and sol on the outside strings, and it's just a fabulous instrument. As a matter of fact. Coming back full circle to the banjo. One of the things I like to do is I like fiddle tunes and tunes you could put on the banjo. So like in the mid-90s, a book came out, a banjo book that was a republishing of the Briggs Banjo Instructor from 1855, which was a collection, it was tunes, rhythms, and melodies collected from African Americans that imported them from West Africa with the banjar, which was the banjo when it came to America.
Interesting.
But of course, because after this book, it was the first published book of a banjo instruction book and published music for the banjo. But it was picked up obviously by white players that then began the whole minstrel banjo thing. So these tunes were cloaked in that racist focus, right? So even putting them on the banjo now was like, well, maybe, these were played by the minstrel. But then just this year, a guy, Kyle Young, came out with another ukulele version of the Briggs banjo instructor. But he did a really great job of recasting the tunes that, we know the racist history of the minstrel show, but these tunes are the first collected African American tunes. And the rhythms are so great. So a lot of them are in F, but because of the re-entrant tuning of the ukulele, you can hear that you don't want to lose these tunes. And here's one of them. It's called the Circus Jig. I'm loading it. It's just, you can see that these tunes need to be played, but you can see now, that sounded like a banjo tune.
Right,
or kind of a fiddle tune on the ukulele. So it's come full circle.
That's cool.
I don't believe in coincidence, I believe in coincidence. And when something like this happens that somebody gives me a banjo, somebody gives me a ukulele, suddenly I'm playing banjo tunes on the ukulele and
it was all for a reason.
That's right. And meeting you too, I'm just really an honor to know you, and thank you so much for this interview. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for joining me, Jim. It was a great honor to have you here. Thank you for hanging out with me and sharing your wisdom. And again, I will put links to Jim's website, which you should absolutely check out. Thank you, Jim. This was so fun.
It was.
Yeah.
I love talking it.